Today you are going to be learning about commas, parentheses, and dashes. These are all different punctuation marks that help writers organize their thoughts and also divide sentences into meaningful parts. But in order to understand how to use commas, parentheses, and dashes, you have to understand what a non-restrictive element of a sentence is. So let's look right here. A non-restrictive element of a sentence are elements that are not essential to the meaning of the sentence. They add extra detail to the sentence without changing the meaning. This means that you can actually pull those details out and the sentence will still make sense. They are usually indicated by commas, so that's when we'll see them typically when they're in commas, but they can also be marked by dashes or parentheses. So let's look at what an example of a non-restrictive element is. So here's the sentence. It says, Lauren, my best friend, loves to listen to music. So I highlighted the non-restrictive element or non-essential element, which is my best friend. So if I were to delete that, the meaning of the sentence is still going to be the same. So Lauren, my best friend, loves to listen to music. Lauren loves to listen to music. If I take that detail out, the sentence still makes sense. So the non-restrictive element is my best friend. It's the extra detail that was added to this sentence. So now let's look at what commas, parentheses, and dashes are. So when we're using commas, parentheses, or dashes, we're going to be putting those around the non-restrictive element right here, the extra detail. So when we use commas, you're going to use them when the non-restrictive element is closely related to the main idea. So let's look at a couple examples. The first one says, David Graybeard, the boldest chimp, was the first Jane met. Okay, so we put a comma before and after the boldest chimp. So if we take this non-restrictive element out, the boldest chimp, the sentence is still going to make sense. We use a comma here because the boldest chimp is related to the main idea, David Graybeard. So they relate to each other, so that's why we use commas. The next example says, Lauren, my best friend, loves to listen to music. The non-restrictive element is my best friend, and it relates to the main idea, so that's why we use the comma. And the third example, the lightsaber, which belonged to Yoda, was too small for the full-grown man. So we put commas around the non-restrictive element. So now let's look at parentheses. We know that we use commas when the non-restrictive element is closely related to the main idea. When we look at parentheses, we use those when the non-restrictive element is a side comment or less important than the main idea. So let's look at some examples of this. The chimps made tools, twigs or grass blades, to gather food. So you put parentheses around twigs or grass blades because that's the non-restrictive element. And it's kind of like a side comment here. It's not as important, so that's why it's in parentheses. The next example says the restaurant, which was very expensive, serves only organic food. This is just a side comment. It's not that important, but they threw it in the sentence just to tell us that the restaurant was expensive. But that does not change the meaning of the sentence. And the last example is the shoes I ordered arrived this morning, 1 day early. 1 day early is a non-restrictive element, and it's more of a side comment. So that's why it is in parentheses. And dashes. Dashes we use very sparingly. So we don't really see dashes that often. We use them when there is a sudden interruption in thought. So let's look at a couple examples. Jane was young, surprisingly so, when she first went to study chimps in Africa. The surprisingly so is an interruption in thought. My sister lives in San Diego, which is just north of Mexico. And the last example, the waiter described the dinner special to us: pork chops and applesauce. So we don't really use dashes that often. You will mostly see commas and parentheses. So down here is just a little chart. Here are the commas. This is kind of maintaining the flow, or the non-restrictive element is closely related. So it's kind of keeping the same flow. The parentheses we use when it's a side comment or less important detail. And then the dashes we use when there's a break in the flow or an interruption in thought. Okay, so I will post this to the Google Classroom also, so you can see it as just a Google document, and this can help you with your activity that you're going to do.